Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Now the English were rioting because they are angry. They want their country back. What's been taken? Who's taken it? And why do Muslims bear some responsibility to this? For the answer to the last question, listen till the end. So let's take a look. So let's get straight into it. The first thing the British complain about is that there are far too many non-white people living in Britain. Now, it wasn't always like this. In Britain, even up till the Second World War, and just after the Second World War, the vast majority of people living in Britain were white. However, that changed after the Second World War. Why? Because in the First World War, something like over 800 young men were sent to die. And in the Second World War, something like 650,000 men from Britain were sent to die for commercial corporate interest. Now, that affected the working population. So the British elites invited people from their current and former colonies of the time, from the subcontinent and from Africa and from the Caribbean, to come and work in the factories, to drive the buses and to drive the train. They wanted these people to run the economy because they didn't have sufficient men in the workforce to do that. So who's to blame for the change in the demographics? Is it the Muslims? No, it's the British elite. The other complaint is that the immigrants have come over here and taken our jobs. We don't have jobs. That's why we are unemployed. The reason immigration took place in the first place is because there were jobs and there were nobody there to fill these vacancies after the Second World War, hence the immigration. However, the mass job losses that started to occur in Britain after 1979 is because of a dogmatic pursuance of capitalistic ideals by the new Conservative Party of that time. Factories were closed down, mines were closed down, and millions of people were unemployed in this country. Profit before everything else was the approach taken by the government of 1979 and every single subsequent government since that time. So Britain became a service economy rather than a manufacturing economy. There is no manufacturing in Britain to speak of. Everything was outsourced to cheaper places where cheaper labour existed in order for the corporate elite to make more profits at the expense of jobs at home. So today, there is no British car industries. So brands like Morris, Austin, Rover, Triumph, Jaguar, Land Rover, Range Rover, none of these cars are part of British manufacturing anymore. All of these are owned by either Chinese or Indian companies. There is no manufacturing in textiles to speak of. Once, when there were thousands of mills peppering the Lancashire and Yorkshire landscape, today there are none. These factories have been closed down and turned into flats, or turned into retail parks, or turned into office space, or whatever else. But there is no textile manufacturing business that you can speak of in Britain anymore. So the mass unemployment that followed in the 80s, there's always been a high level of unemployment since that time. But even today, even people who do have jobs, and in some cases people may have two jobs, they still cannot meet the cost of living, and Britain is suffering from a cost of living crisis because of the dogmatic approach or dogmatic submission to capitalistic ideals and values. So why are people worse off today, even when they might have two jobs? Is because the pound they are earning today has been devalued, and what it can buy today is not what it could buy in yesteryear. The British pound, like every other fiat currency, intrinsically has no value and therefore is devaluing over time. So what £1 could buy 10-15 years ago is not what £1 can buy today. And if you look at this graphic here, 1 ounce of gold in 1960 you could buy for £15. Today, the latest prices are 1 ounce of gold is £1,900. That's an increase of 12,567%. If you look at the average house price in 1960s, it was £2,500. Today, the average price of a house is £287,000, an increase of 11,380%. However, the earnings have not kept up at the same rate. So in 1960, the average wage was £650 a month. Today, the average wage is £34,000 a month. That's an increase of 5,131%. Now you can see obviously from this, what you could buy with £650 in 1960 is not what you can buy with £650 today. So 1 ounce of gold was £15, but today for you to buy that same ounce of gold, you will have to spend £1,900. In other words, £1,900 is equal to the £15 of 1960. Your pound is not the same. You are poorer today, not because of the Muslims, but because of adherence to capitalistic values. So mass unemployment was done by design, not by accident. Selling public assets was done by design, not by accident. The devaluing of the currency is because of capitalistic values and not by accident. And none of this you can blame Islam for. These problems are because of liberal, secular, capitalistic values. The third complaint is that Britain is a Christian values and immigrants and Muslims should respect that. The fact is, Britain is not a Christian country. Britain is a liberal, secular country. And it has been like that for many, many decades. No one is stopping anyone from going to the church. They themselves have decided not to go to the church because the majority of the people no longer believe in Christianity or believe in a God or believe in any kind of religious values. Religion and Isa al-Islam are regularly mocked in mainstream media. Schools used to begin the day with Christian assemblies. They no longer do that. Sunday used to be a day of rest and shops were not allowed to open. That was abolished in the 1980s. So instead of going to the church, people were now going shopping. That wasn't done by Muslims. That was done by the government adhering to liberal, secular values. The fourth complaint is that we have lost England. England is unrecognizable. Traditional families are dead. The traditional role models of a father and a mother are no longer there. The role of a woman of being a mother and a wife and a homemaker has gone to becoming a breadwinner. So there is no one at home making the home. So the breakdown in society, the increase in delinquency, the rudeness, the gangsterism, the knife crime, the theft, and all the ills that we have in society is not disconnected from the fact that the family unit has been eroded, society and communities have been eroded. As Margaret Thatcher once said, there is no such thing as society, there is only individuals. And that is what capitalism has done. They have atomized society, taking away traditional structures, traditional communities, traditional families, atomizing each individual. So each individual is viewed as a unit who can contribute to the economy, to the extent whereby the traditional family unit is viewed as a threat to the promotion of LGBTQ plus values in society. So not only is Britain unrecognizable, Britain itself doesn't even recognize what a woman is anymore. That's the state we are in today. Muslims don't believe in these values. Muslims didn't bring these values. The blame for this lies at the door of liberal secular values. Number 5, they claim that our government no longer represents us, no longer listens to us. The fact of the matter is, no democratic government actually listens to the people. They only care for the vote at the time of the election. After the election, it is the bankers, the corporate elite, and the rich that shape the legislative program, that shape the government, and decide on what program to embark on in order to protect their values and interest first and foremost. Everything else is secondary. So who is to blame for the loss of life, for the depreciation of their wealth, jobs, money, for the loss of their religion, for the loss of their traditional values, for the loss of their society and the security that they had? Who is to blame for this? It's not the Muslims. It's the liberal secular democracies that have shaped these societies. They are to blame for the loss that they are now crying about. So while they drug the people on freedom and saying that you are free, that liberal secular democracy has set you free, they have been drugged on LSD and they have been told to blame the immigrant and the foreigner, whilst it is their politicians and their elite who run the country that have taken what was dear to them away. So the very thing that the English are complaining about, the British people are complaining about, are the very same things that Islam came to secure and protect. Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah, states that the Sharia has 5 maqasid. The protection of the life, hifzul nafs, the protection of wealth, hifzul mal, the protection of religion, hifthul deen, the protection of the family, hifthul nasl, and the protection of the mind, hifthul aql. These are the broad objectives of the Sharia. So it is the duty of the Muslim to engage in meaningful da'wah, to explain to the people submitting to the altar of liberal secular values is what has caused you your loss, and submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what will protect what is dear to human beings. So it is our duty and the responsibility of the Muslims to establish an Islamic model of government, the Khilafah in the Muslim world. So then we can invite the English and the rest of the world to that which is better for them. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.